Hello, BookTube. I felt a little sorry that Wednesday Comics this week was derailed by a Wednesday nor'easter. Pitch black skies, freezing cold sleet, followed by snow on the day that I usually do my comics episode. and it underscored for me the reality of my comic experience these days. There was a time, many, many years, where nothing would have stopped me from going out to get the latest issues of all the comics that I followed. But I don't follow latest issues anymore. I mainly just get collections and graphic novels and paperbacks of that one kind or another. And so when the day itself was ugly and messy, I just easily decided not to go. I can only imagine how many dyed-in-the-wool comic book fans trekked out to their local comic shop, their LCS, in the middle of that weather. I don't, because the comic shops all made sure to say that the deliveries were unimpeded and that the new issues were there. So, but I did go by the comic shop once the weather cleared and the skies cleared, and I was able to walk around without traipsing through slush. And there was something that I did get, and we were in the last few of Wednesday Comics installments. We were dealing with the founding characters of the Marvel Comics superhero line, and this time around it's some founding characters of the DC Comics superhero line. This is their reprint series. This is World's Finest Silver Age Volume 2 with a new cover by Doc Shanier. This team-ups of Superman and Batman and Robin from 1959, 1960, and 1961 in a nice handy paperback that was a delight to reread. It was a delight. This is Superman and Batman home from the war. This is Superman and Batman moving out of the nice, safe, steady 1950s into a new world, into a world where comic book readers were expecting something more than superheroes fighting crooks, bank robbers, that sort of thing. Comic readers were starting to be influenced by massive popularity of science fiction in other genres, and wanting bigger, more epic adventures in their comic books, which is fine for Superman. It presents a bit of a problem for Batman and Robin, who were created to fight bank criminals, bank robbers, gangsters, and who for their first 20 years of existence did almost nothing else. That's all they did, was one adventure after another of there's some new gang in Gotham. They've got a new scheme for when and how they rob banks, and it's up to Batman and Robin to stop them. And Batman and Robin don't have guns, and the gangsters do. Batman and Robin are often shot. Batman and Robin are clever. They're better fighters, and they have all sorts of gimmicks from their utility belts. But that's about it. So when these issues rolled around, the writers, I always forget the artwork in these issues is by Dick Sprang and my beloved Kurt Swan, who will always be my Superman artist. It's mostly Dick Sprang, and when I was rereading it, I was noticing what a great job he does. This is big, wide-angle artwork, wonderful panel designs. I know he did it at breakneck speed, but still, really nice. Not Kurt Swan nice, in my opinion, but still a joy to look at. But the writing is by Edmund Hamilton, Bill Finger, and Jerry Coleman. And they have a distinct challenge. And the part of the challenge, you might think, from the vantage point of 2018, you might think, well, it's not a distinct challenge to write a team-up of Superman and Batman and Robin, because they're so different. But that wasn't the case back in the 1960s. In the 1960s, keep in mind, this was before Batman was repurposed to his darker roots. So he'd faded away from those roots, and he had yet to return to them. This is in a period where Batman's just a guy. He doesn't have the dark borderline psychosis, the driven obsession, the violence that made him such a compelling character when he was first introduced, and that make him such a compelling character now. There was a 25-year period there where he was just some guy. He was a guy. He had witty banter with Robin. He punched criminals. He had a bunch of gimmicks in his utility belt, and that was it. there was no tortured psyche. So, which is fine in his own book. His own books, Detective Comics and Batman from the time, are wonderful fun. But when you team him up with Superman in World's Finest at this particular period, you're really presented with a problem, because the Superman of this period is consistently portrayed as incredibly smart. He's not just a powerhouse. He is a powerhouse. He can do instantaneous international flight far faster than the speed of light. He can lift any weight whatsoever. There's no strain at all to any of the exercise of his superpowers. This was Superman at his most godlike. But it wasn't just physical power. In this time, he was also a scientific genius, a deductive genius. In fact, the writers in Superman's 2 books, Superman and Action Comics, at the time that these issues were coming out, were stressing cerebral solutions to the problems that he encountered. He almost never simply beat the bad guy. Instead, there was a trick, there was a gimmick, there was something he had to figure out. And if that's true of the version of Superman that you're including in Adventures with Batman and Robin, then what have Batman and Robin got to do? If Superman doesn't need them for detective abilities, and if the plot doesn't need them for darker shades of psychology, then you're teaming Superman, who is able to juggle planets at this time in his... I myself, I'm the world's biggest Superman fan, but I am not particularly a fan of a Superman at that power level. That really does sort of become borderline uninteresting. But if you've got a Superman who can do all of that, what would be the point of teaming him up with Batman and his teenage sidekick? And yet, our writers find a way. It's not always an unpredictable way. In a number of these stories, Batman, or even Batman and Robin, temporarily gain superpowers, identical superpowers to Superman. Or the superpowered criminal, or the alien, the visiting alien in a lot of these stories, will have a way to incapacitate Superman, either with kryptonite or with something else, so that Batman and Robin have to step forward. And this was, in addition to being before the dark and tortured Batman, this was also before there was any expectation of a kind of multifaceted version of Batman's friendship with Superman. Instead, they were just friends. They were just buddies. Nothing was made of it, and there was no such thing as friction between them, or even disagreement between them. And there was no such thing as friction or disagreement between them and the outside power structure of the law. I lost count how many times in these stories where some character or other says, "Oh, I'd better call the police." And in the next panel, it's Superman, Batman, and Robin that character is talking to, because there's just a complete identification of the two. So the writers come up with gimmicks like that. You either depower Superman or you uppower Batman, and that does the trick. Or you make them equally nonplussed, so that the superpowers don't matter. As you can tell from this cover, those of you who are Superman and Batman longtime fans will recognize the two figures who share the cover with our heroes. One is Batmite, and the other is Mr. Mixia's Pitalik. And both of them are extra-dimensional beings that the writers brought on just to have a lot of yucks, to have a lot of fun. Stories, every once in a while, one of these characters would pop out of thin air and make typewriters fly through the air, or change the nature of colors, or give somebody a huge head, or whatever. And it was up to our heroes, superpowered or not, to try and figure out a way to contain the damage and reverse the plans of this imp, whichever imp we're talking about. And there's actually a story in here where they team up, where the two imps start fighting with each other, and it's up to Superman and Batman to sort of save the day. And other luminaries appear in here as well. There's Batwoman, not the current Batwoman, but the original Batwoman, who makes a very good appearance. There's Lois Lane. There's Brainiac, although he's not named. There's the Bottle City of Kandor, although one of the writers, the writer who wrote that episode, forgets that it's called Kandor and calls it Krypton City or something like that. And there's Lex Luthor. There's a wonderful story about Lex Luthor developing a way to conquer the Bottle City of Kandor. And it doesn't matter that you can You can look at these things, you can page through them, and find enormous plot holes. Believe me, the men who wrote these things knew those plot holes were there. These were meant to entertain. And they really do. They really do entertain. I'm in a position where I have known these characters for so long, I've enjoyed their adventures for so long, that I'm okay with a lot of different registers. There is no World's Finest comic right now, but there is an ongoing, or there was an ongoing title teaming Batman with Superman. It went on for years. And it's hilarious to compare it to the original title, ongoing title teaming Batman and Superman, because they're nothing alike. Nothing at all. In the Batman Superman comic, or in, whatever iteration it takes going from here on out, the main attraction for readers is the personality stuff. It's what do you get if Batman and Superman, who now in comics have a long history not just of being friends, but also of being enemies, or even just distant neutral partners. They have gone through it all now. When these things were coming out, it was just assumed that Superman and Batman would, of course, be best friends. Not anymore. So the draw for a Superman-Batman comic in 2018 is the personal interaction. One stands for light and the other for darkness. One stands for optimism and the other for fear. That sort of stuff would have been incomprehensible to these writers. But they still managed to do a great job. And not only that, the thing that I was impressed with throughout this rereading these things is how useful they make Robin. He really is a character on his own. And he brings something to most of the stories that Batman and Superman don't bring. Whatever that something is. It's always something a little different. Some new idea, some usually funny interjection that makes me appreciate him all over again. Of course, I'm a big fan of the original TV cartoon Super Friends, which didn't call itself the Justice League, but which did have a small Justice League type team, and it was Superman, and it was Aquaman, and it was Wonder Woman, and it was Batman and Robin, not just Batman. So of course it was fun to see Robin participating so much in these adventures. But this is great. I absolutely love, I think I've mentioned it before, I absolutely love this ongoing paperback and hardcover reprint project by DC Comics. I think they're doing it exactly right. And they're keeping it up. They're keeping up a steady stream of these things so that you can either get the enormous hardcover volumes, or then they split them up into paperbacks, if you want to do it that way. And I'm very much a fan of it, because I love these old DC comics. I do. I know they're not the fashion now. They don't have a psychological dimension. They don't have any of the 1960s youth culture stuff that Stan Lee dragged into comic books and that's not now going anywhere. They don't have anything like that. They're just adventure stories. But I love them all the more for that. So that is Wednesday Comics displaced to Saturday. And unbelievably, it looks like for the third week in a row, Boston may be getting horrible, snowy, slushy weather on Wednesday. I'll keep an eye on it. It might not happen, but I'll do my best. I'm not going to trek out in slush and snow and sleet to get comic books. Those days are over. But if I can at all, I will. And in the meantime, I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.